Like last week, we've heard from chapter 6 of John's Gospel, and with today's reading, we have the beginning of what is called Jesus' Bread of Life discourse. The claims that Jesus makes about himself in the Bread of Life discourse, these claims are extraordinary. So extraordinary and yet so familiar that we may not grasp their significance. Jesus claims to be greater than Moses, who was by far, in a way, the greatest of all the Old Testament prophets. Moses is such a great prophet, we might not even think of him as a prophet because his relationship with God was so extraordinary. We're told in Exodus chapter 33, Exodus 33 is a beautiful chapter that will, if you read it, you'll see just how special Moses is. Moses talked to God as a person talks to a friend. God was not going to follow the Israelites to the promised land. God was going to stay at Mount Sinai. We see the Lord speaking to Moses in the burning bush on Mount Sinai there, and in our mural there. And God wasn't even going to go with them to the Holy Land because he was so upset with them. But Moses is such a good friend of God. Moses convinces God that it's in God's best interest, so to speak, to come with them. So Moses is just an absolutely extraordinary religious figure, the greatest of the prophets, and Jesus claims to be greater than even Moses. Jesus' superiority to Moses will be realized by providing the greatest of possible gifts, not only to the Jewish people who Moses served explicitly, but to all peoples. The gift of Jesus will be offered to everyone, to the whole world. This greatest of gifts will be the gift of his very self in the bread of life, the Eucharist, which provides spiritual nourishment not only for life on this side of death, but for, and more significantly, for eternal life. A fullness of life that only Jesus himself can give. That was something that Moses could not offer, right? Moses did not have it to offer, but in Jesus, who we know will rise from the dead, who is the Lord himself, he can give it because he has it. He lives forever. He has eternal life to share with us. No one else has that, but he can. And he chooses to share it with us through the sacraments and in an extremely significant way related to our human condition. He shares it with us through the Eucharist. Allow me to explain this extraordinary revelation of his gift, that if we truly understood what the Eucharist is, we would devote all that remains of our lives to receiving it worthily and helping others to come to receive it worthily. Just a day before this revelation given to us in chapter 6, the gospel we heard last weekend, Jesus fed thousands of people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. This resulted in some of the more religiously astute among the thousands of recipients to compare Jesus with Moses, who 1,300 years earlier, during the 40 years of wandering in the desert, had given their ancestors manna, that miraculous bread from heaven provided by God. And as good and significant as manna was for supporting the physical lives of their ancestors, the Jewish contemporaries of Jesus, they had sort of extended the presence of manna beyond those 40 years into their own time and place, because they've made a spiritual and symbolic link that connects the manna to the Torah, to the law of God given to Moses on Mount Sinai, the first 5 books of the Bible, essentially, the law of God, because both the manna and the law were given by God through Moses. So there's a strong connection between that manna that fed their ancestors so that they could survive on their earthly life journey, and a connection to the Torah, which continues to nourish the Jewish people spiritually. And this, of course, includes the folks who are following Jesus as his disciples. Some of those sated Jewish followers who had eaten the bread that Jesus provided, they recognized that Jesus was so much like Moses that Jesus might be the anticipated ultimate successor of Moses. This was something that many Jewish people believed, that there would be some ultimate successor of Moses, sometimes simply called the prophet. And it comes from something that Moses has himself said and recorded in chapter 18, verse 15 of Deuteronomy. Moses said, "A prophet like me will the Lord your God raise up for you from among your own kindred. That is the one to whom you shall listen." So for many of the Jewish contemporaries of Jesus, they're looking for this singular, ultimate successor of Moses to whom they need to listen, that Moses himself said they must listen. Now, to be like Moses is one thing, and it is even an extraordinary thing. However, to be greater than Moses is more than extraordinary. Practically speaking, in the context in which Jesus lived and taught and performed his miracles, being greater than Moses was something reserved for God himself. And yet this is exactly what Jesus seems to be implying about himself when he says in the gospel passage we just heard, "This is the work of God, that you believe in the one he sent." This is the work of God, that you believe in the one he sent. So now some of these Jewish followers are thinking, he is claiming to be the prophet. He is claiming to be the ultimate successor of Moses. So they recognize this claim, and they want Jesus to prove his exalted status by performing a miracle even greater than those of Moses. And this, of course, is no small request. It would take me way too long to even describe and list the extraordinary miracles of Moses. And certainly I don't have the time to explain them all. Let's just simply recognize that Moses parted the Red Sea. Moses parted the Red Sea. And these Jewish disciples, Jesus has already provided bread in a way similar to Moses. Now they want something even more. They want him to really prove this. Jesus responds to the request to perform a sign greater than those of Moses by indicating that in the future he will do just that, though perhaps not in a way that they will appreciate and accept. He will do this by giving bread not only to the Jewish people, but to all peoples of all times. He will do this by offering a bread that nourishes not only for life on this side of death, as the manna did, but for eternal life. And this bread that he will give will in fact be his very own body. He told those whom he had fed with the 5 loaves, who were looking for an even greater sign, the following: I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate manna in the desert, but they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one who eat it and may eat it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever, and the bread that I will give is my flesh for the life of the world. End of quote. Jesus will accomplish this at his Last Supper by celebrating the very Passover meal given by God through Moses, and elevating this most significant of Jewish rituals into the sacrament of sacraments, the Eucharist, telling his 12 apostles to repeat it in memory of him. During that first Holy Mass on the night before his passion and death, Jesus prayed with the unleavened bread of the Passover, saying, "This is my body. This is my body." The very Mass we celebrate now is a fulfillment of his promise to perform a sign even greater than that of Moses. As we prepare to receive Jesus in the sacrament of his body, let us ask him for an even greater faith in his real presence in the Eucharist. It is the real presence by which Jesus imparts to us the blessing of eternal life, a life of endless bliss that not even Moses could give, but only Jesus himself can give, because only Jesus truly possesses eternal life and is able to share it with others.